Holy, what an introduction. It's like exactly not what I was expecting going into it, but it is still like it's giving like James Bond action movie, except she's like a woman. And she's killing it. The full face of makeup, she looks amazing. Anyway, I do want to talk about the story of the game. The basic setup is obviously you're Lara Croft. She was in a plane crash as a child, and they were stuck in some ruins. They were in a tomb, if you will, and Lara's mom died. She is presumed dead. There was a big green explosion. Not many people really walk away from that. And basically what Lara's mission is she's just trying to figure out what happened to her mom. She's going across to all these different tombs, collecting pieces of this artifact, which you later find out is a sword. It's a sword, by the way. There's some other stuff going on, too. There's a point in the game where we flash back to one of Lara's previous excursions, which I've never played a Tomb Raider game before. I don't really know how the continuity works. From what I know, Tomb Raider Legend is like a reboot, like a soft reboot. I don't know if the plots carry over. I kind of just assumed that they stopped counting after the numbered entries stopped, and it was just kind of like a Sonic the Hedgehog vibe where each game is like a new continuity. But anyway, she has this friend. She has a couple friends. All of them die, so they're not really all that important. But she has this friend named Amanda, and after all of her other friends die, it's just her and Amanda in this tomb. And Amanda's freaking out, having a real emotional response to all of her friends dying, might I say. She pulls the wrong stone, she presses the wrong button, and the room begins to fill with water. Like, they don't have to deal with the scary monster anymore, but the walls are kind of coming in on them. Amanda gets trapped underneath a rock, and from my perspective, and Lara's perspective, it looks like Amanda gets, like, fully crushed to death. So Lara leaves. I can't blame her for that. It looked like Amanda was a lost cause. But Amanda actually survived. And she's gone full Hot Topic. She's gone full evil mode. And she's working with this guy. It doesn't matter who he is. He really doesn't do anything. I'm calling him Mr. Sunglasses. But she's working with Mr. Sunglasses to assemble this sword, which kind of puts her at odds with Lara. And she kind of holds a grudge a little bit because Lara basically left her for dead in this tomb, which I'm not on your side, Amanda. It is so not on Lara for that. She says she's over it, but the fact that she keeps like digging in on it in cutscenes, I just don't think you're over it, Amanda. But yes, they're collecting these pieces of a sword, which turns out to be Excalibur. King Arthur is real, and it's supposedly the key to Avalon. Spoiler warning, by the way. I don't know if that was clear. This game is 20 years old, so don't pretend you're playing Tomb Raider for the story. I'm playing it because I want to play as a cool woman that does flips and shoots guns and steals, I guess. But, the plot was really secondary to my experience to the game. Back to the story, you do eventually assemble Excalibur. It turns out Lara's mom did not die in the plane crash when she was a child. She got transported to Avalon in a pretty violent looking explosion, so I can't really begrudge Lara for thinking that her mother is dead. But at the end, she inserts Excalibur into this dais, whatever. And it opens up a woohoo time travel portal where she sees the day that her mother died. And apparently it's like a two-way thing. She's like talking to her mom, but her mom doesn't really understand what's happening. And it explodes. So yeah, cliffhanger. Now, up until this point when I was playing the game, I had no idea that I was playing the first game in a trilogy. But no, this one does have a prequel and a sequel. Tomb Raider Anniversary, which was the next game to come out, was a remake of the first game, which kind of sets up some of the stuff in Legend, which doesn't really work retroactively because I still had no idea who any of these characters were besides Lara Croft going into it. But there is also a sequel, Tomb Raider Underworld, in which I assume that they go to Avalon or something. I don't know, didn't play it. Just talking about this one. That might mean that I have kind of a skewed perspective of this game. I don't exactly have the full story. And maybe if I bought this game on release, I would know that there was going to be a sequel. But even then, that's not really something that you would want to lead with. Be like, oh, buy this game. It's like 4 hours long, and we're going to release a sequel in 2 years. Like, that's just not really a good model, so I feel like it is fair to judge this game on its own. I do want to play the other one, though. Like, I had a good time. I'm going to get there. Speaking of Tomb Raider Anniversary setting up the characters, I can't imagine any setup is going to make the side characters that are kind of talking to you through an earpiece the whole game any more interesting. They just kind of quip at you. They have some like one-liners. You have a guy that's like, "Oh yeah, Lara, go raid those tombs." And then you have the other guy who's like, "Oh, Lara, I can't believe you're dangerous. Tomb raiding is dangerous. I can't believe you're doing it." Like, it's kind of lame. She also has a butler, but he doesn't really do all that much. And there's Mr. Sunglasses, another character I could not care less about. He doesn't really do anything besides insinuate that Amanda is alive at the beginning of the game, which kind of leads Lara to go to level 2. Basically, he's a level transition with a personality. Personality is a strong word for what this man has. The real star of the show is Lara Croft, obviously. I'm not playing Tomb Raider, I'm playing Lara Croft Tomb Raider. So she's kind of carrying it for me. She's very quippy, she's very sassy, she does fucking flips for days, she's great. And on top of that, once we finally meet Amanda, she is also pulling a lot of weight for me. I'm invested in Amanda as, like, dark Lara. You can just look at them side by side. They are kind of like visual contrasts of each other. You know, Lara's a brunette. Like, she's still in heavy makeup, but when you compare her to Amanda, who is, like, super pale and blonde, it's giving, like, a Bayonetta Jean dynamic, but that's kind of the vibe that I get from them. It might just be because Lara is British, and she's pretty acrobatic, but I couldn't not think of Bayonetta while playing this game. Speaking of playing the game, how are the tombs? The tombs are levels, obviously. Each level is a tomb of sorts. The degree of which, the degree of their tomb likeness depends on the level, but most of them have you scaling cliffs or like solving a puzzle to access the tomb, and then you're doing like all kinds of puzzles, fighting the bad guys that are in the tomb. Again, haven't played Tomb Raider before, don't really know the formula to the levels, but from what I found, it's pretty standard for a puzzle platformer. You know, you climb, you jump, you move blocks onto pressure plates. There are spinny blade walls, you can shoot, you can grapple, and most importantly, you can do flips like crazy. Just like look at some of these flips. She has no need to be doing all of that, but I appreciate her commitment. Honestly, it's really impressive.
That was brilliant.
But going back to shooting and all that stuff, the combat. There is combat in this game, and it leaves quite a bit to be desired. Most of the combat in this game doesn't really involve aiming. The most aiming you're going to be doing in this game is to shoot something for something to fall down, to complete a puzzle or something like that. You don't really need to aim to shoot the enemies. There's really no benefit into going into an encounter with stealth. You don't have to like sneak up on somebody and you can like one-shot them in the back of the head. That's just not how this game works. It's kind of balls to the wall. Not needing to aim in combination with the infinite ammo means that every combat encounter is pretty much you jumping around, flipping, shooting the guns, going into like the slow-mo mode. And yeah, the guns you pick up do have ammo that you have to worry about, and they're normally more accurate and more powerful, but worst case scenario, there is not a single enemy in this game that you can't easily take out with just her pistols. It might take a little bit longer because the accuracy is lower, but it really doesn't change anything. I know that 2006 is well past the Wild West of video games. Even 3D video games are pretty old at this point, but I was kind of surprised with how like fluidly it controlled. It's a little clunky because it's a PS2 game. It's a late PS2 game at that. But it makes use of the triangle button in a really interesting way. It's kind of like reaction commands in Kingdom Hearts 2. Pressing the triangle button when prompted lets you interact with the environment in unique ways. Pretty much always shooting stuff. When you press triangle, you're pretty much always shooting stuff. Usually in combat, there can be some explosive barrels or like board you can shoot down. It's gonna like drop rocks on the enemies or something like that. And it's nice to do some really cool stuff with a very simple button press, because I do not want to painstakingly aim my guns with the stiff ass PS2 analog sticks that just do not allow for any kind of accuracy. So this game is pretty clunky. It's an old game. So we're gonna go to Nitpick Central. This is all the stuff that really bothered me when I was playing the game. Again, it's not that long. It was maybe like a 4.5 hour experience. There were still some things that really got me, right? This is just going to be rapid fire. There's this one puzzle where you have to pull down this lever before the locks close back on the lever. And in order to get to it, you have to jump across the spinning platform, and it doesn't really feel like the physics was like capable of handling that. I just don't feel like that was the right way to do the puzzle. Maybe it was, but it didn't feel right. This is the same level, but this is also an issue in a later level, but there's a lot of pulling rafts across water, and it is just slow, it is tedious, and half the time your grapple doesn't lock on to the right area. You can only pull on certain like sparkly geometry, and sometimes it just doesn't lock on, especially in the later instance. You have to lock on to multiple different like, oh, hello. Hello. Especially in the later instance, you have to lock on to multiple different candelabras that are really close to each other. I think they're candelabras, I don't know. Sometimes it just won't lock onto it, and you're locking onto the same one, and the water is constantly pushing you back, so you don't even really have a chance to try and hit the right one. It just got a little old. Past a certain point, moving blocks got so annoying, especially in levels where you have to move multiple blocks. There's this one section in the real King Arthur's tomb in England where you have to build basically a platform for yourself across like pits of fire. Just doing that is it takes so long. It takes so long, and I hate doing it. And this is another puzzle that I felt like I just kind of had to brute force because I couldn't find a way to keep pushing the blocks. So I did just kind of have to take a little bit of damage from jumping into the fire and running out. You can remedy some of the moving blocks because you can pull them with your grapple, which is a lot easier than trying to kind of finagle the pushing. The pushing controls are very slippery. You can try to go in a straight line, you can try and do like a tight turn, but the block just doesn't cooperate with you. This fire block situation wouldn't be nearly as bad if you didn't also have to backtrack out of the level and remove all of the blocks in order to finish the level, basically. And you're being shot at, so it just kind of compounds on how annoyed I was going into it that I just had to do it again. There's this one rope in this one level. The ropes are a little hit or miss usually, but there's this one rope in the flashback mission where you just have to jump onto it. You just have to jump onto the rope. And for the life of me, it took me so long to grab onto this rope, and when I finally did, I realized that I had to do something else in the puzzle because I wasn't able to jump to the final platform. There were spikes in the way. I had to jump off of the rope and then painstakingly jump back onto the rope in order to finish the puzzle. I didn't talk about bosses at all. This game does have bosses. They're not very good. They are kind of just bullet sponges with some slight puzzly elements. The first one is not. Your first boss fight, you are just dodging this guy as he shoots green beams at you. The second boss fight is a little more interesting because Mr. Sunglasses is constantly healing, and you have to damage the podiums he's on in order to break them, basically. Which, like, doing that 4 times is a little much because he heals in between each one. I tried doing it quick enough to keep him from healing, but I was just unable to do it. Now, your third boss fight, this one got me a little bit. It's a little more complex. Again, rules of 4 apparently with the bosses here, but first you have to pull 4 levers to drop 4 bulbs, and then you have to blast the 4 bulbs to create like some kind of electrified circuit, and then you can finally pull the sword fragment out of this kind of center area in order to end the boss fight. You don't really grapple all that much in this game, so I completely forgot that you could do this, and so for the first couple attempts at this boss, I just was trying to figure out what to do at the end, and I just got killed a bunch. All you have to do is get out of the machine and just hit square to grab the item, which that was a little annoying when I figured that one out. Oh my god, the vehicle levels! I gotta talk about the vehicle levels! There are vehicle sections in this game, and they go on for a little too long. Not only do they go on a little too long, They are very slippery to control, and if you crash into anything, that's over. You go back to your previous checkpoint. The game is pretty generous with health packs and checkpoints, but you're not usually taking enough damage for the health packs to really be that much of an issue. You're most likely going to slip and crash into an obstacle. And not only that, Lara's accuracy is terrible in the main game. In the motorcycle sections, it's even worse because, you're on a motorcycle. So most of the time, what you're doing is dodging and weaving between all of these obstacles, holding down L1 and R1 to shoot the enemies, with the occasional explosive barrel coming by that you can shoot with triangle. Now, it's not easy to time that because the motorcycles are going pretty fast, but if you do, the dopamine release is like nothing else. It's incredibly cool and satisfying. It's just, unfortunately, in one of the motorcycle segments. Okay, things I liked. The set pieces are great. This game looks pretty good for a PS2 game. So all of the massive tombs with the waterfalls and all that stuff, I think that that's really neat. Unfortunately, a lot of the set pieces are gated behind QuickTime events. I'm not going to put that in a negative because something I found after I finished the game is that there is an extra where it's just all of the deaths from the QuickTime events. The game controls pretty satisfyingly. It's really fun to flip and jump around, as well as the platforming. Thankfully, Lara tends to lock on to ledges and ropes most of the time, and so it makes doing a really long platforming section feel fluid. Although the game is pretty good at figuring out where you're going and locking you onto a path, like grabbing onto a ledge or something like that, it only works about 85% of the time. The other 15%, you think you're doing something right and Lara is going to full faceplant into a pit. It's a little challenging, especially when the game is putting crumbling walls around you, but that could very well be a skill issue for sure. Also, it's not like any of these sections took me hours. I was never stuck on the game. There were just a couple of instances where I was just beating my head against a wall for seemingly no reason. I think I just might have had a misfire while I was playing the game, because the rest of the game, this game is not hard by any means, but there are certain moments that just really got me for some reason. And I already touched on the boss fights. I didn't like them all that much, but at least you look pretty cool doing them. The final boss in particular, where you fight with Excalibur, is fun. It's more of just a press R1 until you win kind of situation, and the story is also not great. Although, like I said earlier, it's only a third of the story, so the other games could potentially change my mind, but also, as a standalone experience, you're probably not going to be satisfied with the story. The levels give you plenty of meat to chew on throughout the game. There are also a lot of collectibles, so if you don't get them the first time around and you really want to do that platforming section again, just go back and do it. Some of the collectibles are pretty easy to find. I just walked past a lot of them because I really just didn't feel like stopping. But I'm sure that there are some more hidden ones throughout the level. There have to be, right? There's no way that I saw all of them. But yeah, all in all, decently, perfectly fine game. A great game that I got for $12 at my local video game store. I can't say I would have had the same opinion if I played it 20 years ago at full price, but from what I've seen, the game was generally well received, aside from its length, which is unfortunately really short. But if you really want to squeeze all the value out of this 20-year-old game that you may or may not have, go and get all the collectibles. You can run around in Croft Manor, get the collectibles there. There are plenty of secrets, I'm sure. I found a couple of them, like you can get all your equipment and stuff. So, if you have a spare $15 and you just happen to see it, buy it or emulate it. I don't know. I'm just a sucker for physical media, which, if you noticed, between certain clips of the game, you had a really crunchy clips that are like really dark and blurry, and then you have the really HD ones, which are crunchy in a different way, but certainly easier to see. That is because trying to capture my PS2 was a little bit of a journey. There's a little side tangent for the end here. But I had an RCA to HDMI adapter that needed to be plugged in. It was a whole ordeal. I don't even know why it needed a power source. Not really into the technicalities of that there. But converting the RCA to the HDMI and then putting it through a capture card just made it look so muddy and gross. So I eventually just ordered a PS2 to HDMI like direct adapter that comes out of the console. I have one of those for my GameCube, so I don't have trouble capturing that, but I just didn't know that they made one for PlayStations, so I did get one of those, and so now my recordings look nice, so I can make more PS2 stuff. So yeah, 6 out of 10.